All right, we are back. We are live. Looking at the chat here. Hello in Oklahoma. What's up? Hello from Belo, Brazil. Scott, it's imminent, not imminent. Yeah, I know. I just typed it out super quick, and then I realized that I had a spelling error. You guys will probably see a lot of spelling errors up in those titles because I do them very, very speedy. Very speedy. So thank you for the correction. But I did see it as soon as I came into the the stream. Per usual, we're just waiting for everybody to get in here. So take your time, take your time. Welcome, welcome all. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. I had an extremely busy weekend, so that's why I was unable to do a live stream, but we're here. We made it. No, not new mic. Same mic. Sometimes I do it like this. If I'm like spitting a beat or something, but outside of that, it's always going to be down here. All right. Imminent. I don't know if the spelling changed on the Twitter live stream. Let's see. Let's see if it didn't. All right, let's see if I can edit that. Oh yeah, I can. Just got to replace the I here. Yeah, so if you're just new in here, the whole imminent thing was just a quick typo that happened when I was speed typing. So, all right, we have a ton to talk about today, so let's go ahead and get into it. We are now sitting at around 350 people, so we can go ahead and get into it. As you guys can tell, the title of the live stream today is Collapses in Imminent. I messed it up, but that's okay. And the reason for that is the immense amount of progress we're seeing in some very, very delicate areas in terms of Ukraine's defense. The Russians continue to progress across the front line, specifically in the areas that I have talked about on live stream since basically April. To the southern Donetsk direction, in the direction of the 0532 highway, in the Pokrovsk direction from Avdiivka, and then in the Chasiv Yar / New York area. I don't know what you would really call that whole salient along the Severodonetsk Canal. So we've seen a ton of Russian progress. I'm going to take us over to the map in just a second to look at it, but it really is beginning to look like Ukraine is suffering so heavily from manpower shortages that they have no ability to stem any of these Russian advances. You may see an area go silent for about a week or so. Usually it's less than that, 3 or 4 days, and then eventually it picks back up again, and the Russians are making advances. This has to do with both information delay coming out from the front line. Usually it's like 4 days on, 4 days off, 4 days on, where you're getting information from a specific area, something like that. We have a lot of updates to get into. I'm just going to hop right into them because it's going to be quite a bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and do that. All right, here we go. So remember, my last live stream was on Thursday. Friday, we didn't have enough news. Saturday, honestly, we didn't have enough news. And then Sunday rolled around and a bunch of news came in. So these are 4 days worth of updates. But I think that the live streams are kind of better when I do them like this instead of just like doing a whole live stream for a single small update. So in the Kupiansk area on the eastern end of eastern bank of the Oskol River, we have a slight Russian advance north of Peshani here through these trees, capturing a fortification in this area. Again, very important as this lies on the strategic high ground in the region. This penetration by, I believe it's the 1st Guards Tank Army of the Russian Armed Forces, is very significant. It puts a lot of pressure on this entire bank, as I talked about last time. And now it has just expanded, which means that the possibility of this being reversed has diminished for the Ukrainians. And what this actually does is when the Russians eventually make it to Konstantinivka here, they will cut the, let's just go ahead and do it in purple, and we'll go super dark so you guys can see it here. They will cut the whole of the Kupiansk region into two different salients. You'll have, I'm sorry, the Oskal region into two different salients. You'll have the Kupiansk salient here, which will be very, very tight for the Ukrainians, with the primary objective of the Russian offensive being Kupiansk, right within reach. And then down here to the south, this will become sort of like the, I guess you could call it the Liman, the Liman salient here, because that's where all of the logistics comes from. So Liman was very important in capturing and pushing the Russians back off of the Oskal here, and now this will become a salient the second that the Russians complete this maneuver here and cut the highway. Okay, so just a small update, but some pretty big implications from that small update. All right, now that we're getting into it a little bit, I'm just going to do just like a slight intro. I like to do it a couple seconds after we start, a couple minutes after we start. So hi guys, I really appreciate all that you guys have been doing on my Patreon. We just reached 200 total members, which is huge. I think that's awesome. Remember, you can go join my Patreon for free and get free content there. If you do choose to support me, you will get some of that content a week or two early. I really appreciate all you guys. You guys have been so awesome over there. Also, please, if you are new here, go subscribe to this channel. If you are old here, if you're one of the old heads, please go like the video, leave a comment, say something nice, or say something mean, also kind of funny. I really appreciate it. That helps me get just noticed and seen more through the YouTube algorithm. If you want more of my work, guys, go to the link in the description and you will find both my Patreon, my Telegram, and my Twitter. You can go find a lot of updates and more content there. All right, back to the map. Thank you, guys. Sorry for that ad break. The Russians have advanced out of Rozdelivka and the Siversk salient here. Oh, by the way, do you guys like my new cursor? Can you see the new cursor? Some people were complaining that the cursor was too small. They couldn't see exactly what I was pointing at. Actually, I'll do this so that the map is bigger. But I hope that you guys can see the new cursor and that it looks good. If you cannot, please let me know. I'm interested. All right. So the Russians have advanced out of Rozdelivka along this tree line. Basically, all this has done has leveled out the front here. There was a slight dip in the front, and now you're looking at a new front that is poised in the direction of Vikimma and Perzini down here. So we have two separate, very important urban areas. If you guys don't know, this is the last urban settlement before Siversk along this railroad right here. So again, along the high ground, this is the last like slight urban area. I mean, it's not even urban at all, but in terms of the Ukrainians having positions, this is one of the final areas of Ukrainian positions outside of the direct lines of defense of Siversk. So the Russians are very close to closing basically this entire pocket here and advancing very, very close to Siversk and along the, this is a railroad, I believe. Yeah, along the railroad here, all the way into Siversk. So two separate railroads that lead to Siversk that the Russians are currently pushing up. Pressure continues to come from Bilohorivka and the Sporne directions. Okay. Now to a very, very, very big update. Something that I didn't actually think was going to happen for a long time. So zooming in here on Chasiv Yar, if you guys remember, you can see right here that there is the canal. This is a physical barrier that I thought the Ukrainians were going to be able to hold for a much longer period of time. It does appear that the Russians have crossed the canal, likely over here where there is a underground portion of the canal. The Russians then entered into the trench lines that are present along this entire canal here, and have captured some of those trench lines and moved into the first housing areas of Chasiv Yar proper. So Chasiv Yar technically encompasses the micro district here. I just separate it into sort of another little town like Kalinina or Bogdanivka, or just any of these small towns here, Hihorivka, just because it's separated by the canal. So while it's technically part of Chasiv Yar, I think of Chasiv Yar as this portion over here. The Russians have now entered Chasiv Yar proper. If you had watched any of my streams, you would know that I did not expect this to occur at all. I expected the Russians to put pressure on Hihorivka, cross over into the high ground here, and put pressure down here and cross over into Stopochki to the south, get Chasiv Yar into a pincer, and then push in. But due to weak Ukrainian lines, lack of artillery coverage, whatever allowed the Russians to enter, cross the river, and force the Ukrainians out of these defensive positions was successful. And now the Russians are pushing into, very close to pushing into the heart of the city here. If they make any advance out of this bridgehead, which, guys, is not guaranteed. This bridgehead could be removed by the Ukrainians. It is in a very difficult position across the canal, so this could change back instantly. But you're looking at less than a mile, or a mile into the center of Chasiv Yar and into the large industrial facility at its heart that will basically spell the end for the Ukrainian defense of Chasiv Yar. So things are moving very, very, very quick. This is a very, very bad update for the Ukrainian armed forces, especially those defending Chasiv Yar. Again, another hotspot that now the Ukrainians are going to have to expend reserves on, if there are any remaining, to try to halt the Russian advance. Remember, Chasiv Yar is the key now to the entire Slavyansk-Kramatorsk conglomerate here. So if Chasiv Yar falls, the Russians will gain access to this high ground along the canal. Once they have access to the high ground, they will just be able to look down on these urban centers and strike them as they wish. Again, the moves are going to be coming fast, guys. I don't know how to explain this to you, but it's just a snowball right now. The Russians are just getting stronger and stronger and applying more pressure and more pressure. We have some reports from Ukrainian, I think it's Ukrainian government sources, potentially a Ukrainian government source in the Zaporozhye region, talking about how the Russians now have 90,000 troops in this area, not necessarily going to be used for an offensive. I talked about this a lot. I would not expect any large aero offensives. They just cost a lot of manpower, a lot of equipment, high casualties. They're difficult to, they're risky, right? And you don't need to do them if the war is going fine the way you're doing it. But the Russians have 90,000 reserve units in this area down here, which means at any given time, they'll be able to rotate these 90,000 anywhere along the front if they need to, because there is a rail connection down here now. So, in terms of mobility, the Russians are able to move these reserves. And that's not even talking about the reserves in the Russian region up here, back over here in Russia, and then the backside of Luhansk and the DPR. And then, the 90,000 in this region right here. These are high numbers. It doesn't necessarily mean they're 100% accurate. Remember, this is just a Ukrainian government claim. Could be a means to induce fear. I'm not sure. Don't really know why you would lie about that. But that's not good for the Ukrainians. It means that there's going to be no chance of a breakthrough, no chance of a Ukrainian offensive. Not that there really would be a chance of a Ukrainian offensive, but they just don't have the means at all anymore, and they will never be able to recuperate the means to match Russia now in Ukraine, in the SMO zone. So, yeah, things are just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think the areas you're going to start to see suffer are the Siversk salient. I think the Russians are going to want to level the Siversk salient. I know everybody wants to do this stuff. The operational goals are there. But I think that the Ukrainians are getting so weak now that these large advances are going to start to become a reality. I think you're going to see a leveling of the front here. I think you're going to see a leveling of the front by New York and Toretsk as well, up to Konstantinivka pretty soon. And then I think you're going to see a massive offensive down here in the south. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but we have some more updates to go over. So, all right, moving down here to New York, Toretsk area. Down here in the New York Toretsk area, the situation just continues to deteriorate for the Ukrainians. Again, sitting in a salient in defensive lines, not the best. These guys are likely just in hell right now, waiting to basically get FPV'd or glide bombed or struck by artillery or something. Logistics has to be a complete pain in the ass. I mean, there's no roads that lead in here, paved roads, that is. And there are these massive water reservoirs. It's kind of swampy area. So I just can't imagine the Ukrainians in this area are doing very good. If there are very many Ukrainians left in this area at all, it's hard to know what the force disposition is here. But we have a Russian advance in Zalizny up to the road, basically flattening out the front line. I'm actually going to just move this so you guys can kind of see it. You can see that this is the road right here that the Russians have now pushed out on. Basically, the dividing line between Zalizny and then Toretsk proper is right here. So the Russians are very, very close to entering into Toretsk, as well as beginning the siege of this Terrakhon, which, if you remember, I had specifically said would mark the beginning of the Battle of Toretsk. This Terrakhon right here, and then this Terrakhon right here, and these two industrial facilities. Again, once the Russians push in and gain control of these heights, they will be able to utilize the industrial areas around them as well for cover to then launch further attacks into Toretsk, into Provinciany, and all over. And then just to talk about the situation down here a little bit further, like I said, the Ukrainians are now looking at a less than 1 mile gap from the Russian lines on this side and less than 1 mile gap from the Russians on this side, and then these reservoirs blocking most of the pathing in between. So this pocket is now, it doesn't really look this wide anymore. Really, if you think about like where gunfire and where DRGs, like deep reconnaissance groups, are and stuff, you could probably assume that it's something like this, just in terms of the more realistic outlook on this salient. It's probably something like this. I can change these colors too so you guys can see them. Let's go blue, and let's go blue. Okay, so you can see right here the two separate little areas that the Russians are probably operating within. I think I did two separate blues there, but that's okay. Where the Russians are operating within, so they, there are infantry in this area that are blocking any logistics coming into this area. Guys, expect a collapse from this little pocket here pretty soon. One of the last Ukrainian defensive lines from before the war is about to be enveloped. But yeah, it's a difficult position for the Ukrainians to be in. And progress just keeps continuing for the Russians east of Toretsk. Okay, now to another significant little stretch of updates here. Remember, guys, if you have questions, you can go ahead and throw them in. I don't check the chat as much during the map updates, just because I'm on a different screen, focused on this. But if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them up. I might get to them if I see them. All right. So the Russians have made a number of advances. Remember, this is over 4 days. So this is a number of advances. But again, pretty significant when you're talking about the Russo-Ukrainian war. These advances have big meaning and have big impact on the overall battlefield. So first and foremost, the Russians have closed this pocket just north of Pokrovsk. This is a rather old update, but we finally got confirmation. So this pocket closed. The defensive fortification that the Ukrainians were holding in this area was captured, and they were forced to retreat to Ivanovka and Lishny here. Russians have advanced along this small reservoir, which is the Krizhny Torets River. So this reservoir, the Russians have kind of advanced along this small creek bed, riverbed, whatever you want to call it, and have advanced into Timofivka. Which is just basically a little nothing town, likely been completely erased off the map. No buildings, no structure remains. just a name on the map, but that's where the Russians have advanced up into. Again, this brings them very close to the ring road here. So this pocket for the Ukrainians is extremely hot. It's extremely difficult to hold, and the Russians are pushing hard to reach this intersection, a very vital intersection for logistics from Konstantinivka to Pokrovsk. It's a line of communication. Behind it, they're going to have to go a long way around, and that's going to weaken all of the positions here in terms of their logistics capacity. Okay, and then the big chunk of this advance is right here. The Russians had a significant breakthrough when the Ukrainian units in Pokrovsk and Vovoche retreated disorderly. They did not stand up to the Russian assault. The Russians forced a minor breakthrough here and advanced along the railroad to Sohirivka and Zeleny down here, as well as Vesel. This is bad. This is very bad. This puts the Russians incredibly close. I'm just going to show you what's going to end up happening here. The Russians are almost getting to the stage of the war now where they're going to start city hopping. So we're seeing that the Russians are quickly approaching Hordivka here, which is not a major urban center. In fact, it's actually pretty sparsely populated, very spread out, very suburban, just a medium-sized little town here. Nothing, there's no like large industrial areas or anything to grind through here. So it should be a quicker advance by the Russians once they reach the edge of the city right here on these reservoirs. And once they are in here, you will see a quick succession of towns fall. As the Russians advance, you'll see Kruty Yar, Krasny Yar, and Mykolivka right here will be another primary goal. And then immediately after that, the Russians will advance into Mihrad and Pokrovsk. So realistically, what you're looking at here is the Pokrovsk urban conglomerate is something sort of like this. Now, this is a little bit exaggerated just for presentation's sake here. Let's do that. Okay. But that's how close the Russians are to this massive urban center. So again, once the Russians get into the urban fighting, they've done an excellent job in urban fighting throughout this war. And I believe that the Russians will quickly sort of I want to say island hop, because that's what I'm thinking about. The U.S. campaign in World War II against the Japanese, where they were just bouncing from island to island, and every new island became the staging point, the logistics point for the next battle on the next island. That's what you're going to see here. Hihorivka is going to be the staging point for the battles in these small towns as the Russians continue to progress along the rail line, and then they will eventually move into Pramen and Mihrad here. Once the Russians are in Mihrad, they're basically in Pokrovsk, and then the Battle of Pokrovsk has begun. So we could be looking at the start of a major urban battle here within the next month or so. I think is potentially realistic for the Russians to reach Hordivka. Because while they might be very, very close, less than a kilometer away down a road, the Russians are still going to have to expand these flanks here. They can't just make a very, very tight little pathway into these cities. They're going to have to expand this overall front. And that's something that I'm actually going to talk about here very soon. So very significant progress here for the Russians, and very, very bad news for the Ukrainians. Okay, down here, just south of Novoselivka Persha, the Russians have advanced, mostly just flattening the front line. Again, these two pockets of Ukrainian resistance had to withdraw, and now there is probably very little to no Ukrainian presence in this bridgehead at all. It's almost probably entirely gray zone, except potentially some fortifications on this side of the river in front of these two towns, and then obviously the fortifications behind the river. All right. Down here in Krasnohorivka, the Russians have pushed out and have now captured the entirety of the main chunk of Krasnohorivka. I do believe that this right here is considered part of Krasnohorivka, as well as this stretch, which does not offer much in terms of defense for the Ukrainians. The prize has been lost. The Ukrainians can now just use this area for movement and stuff like that. But very significant because now the Ukrainians are again going to find themselves in a massive pocket here that they will be forced to retreat from. And they have fought tooth and nail for Novelske. So it's going to be another big loss. Again, another city has fallen to the Russians. All right. Just to the south of Konstantinivka, the Russians have advanced through 2 fields and have entered the very eastern edge of Konstantinivka. The 79th Air Assault Brigade that is stationed in Konstantinivka has been complaining for quite a long time now that they are not receiving proper reserves in any sense of the word, and everything that they're being sent is just actually hindering combat operations. So very, very difficult situation for the 79th Air Assault Brigade. They also talked about how the leadership has left Konstantinivka for some of the more reserve towns like Ilinka, which means that the Ukrainians are preparing to lose Konstantinivka. Not great, especially considering that Konstantinivka lies along the 0532, which is the main supply road for Vadyane, the coal mine, and Ugledar. All right. The Russians have advanced through these tree lines in a sort of a combined effort with this advance to the north, and are now within rifle range of the, well, not rifle range, still almost a mile, but very, very close. DRGs, I imagine, are within rifle range of the 0532 highway now. So not good for the Ukrainians. It's just going to further complicate logistics along this entire line. And this is currently a defense line for the Ukrainians. So once this falls, the Ukrainians are going to have to fall back to their next defense line. And you can see that partially through some of the fortifications that have been built along the road. This is one of the primary fortifications in the area, at least that we can see. There are likely others that have been built since then. And then to the south here, another small Russian advance in the direction of the 0532. You can see how the Russians are putting pressure along this entire front, and the Ukrainians are cracking. Okay. I think that is it for all of my updates today. Yes, indeed. All right. Good. A little 27-minute map update, huh? Okay. I have some articles that I'm going to talk to you guys about. So if you guys have questions, I'm going to be looking more closely at the questions now. And so if you guys want to start asking some questions, go ahead. And I'll be reading the chat a little bit more aggressively. So here, this was just a kind of a funny little thing that happened. Ukraine is pretty down bad for winds right now. And the Ukrainian government came out and claimed that they destroyed a Russian Tu-22 backfire bomber 118 kilometers away from the border. Key developments on July 29th, Ukraine damaged Russia's Tu-23 M3 bomber 1,800 kilometers away from the border. The GRU confirms. I like how they have to put an H because they don't want to be Russian. Germany delivers Leopard 1 tanks, other aid to Ukraine. Okay. 80th Brigade commander promised promotion after officers speak out against dismissal. And the U.S. announces a $200 million defense aid package for Ukraine. This is funny because at the end of the day, the primary the primary win for the Ukrainians ended up being fake. I can actually take you guys over to my profile where we can see photographic proof of said claim, because I don't want to make claims without providing evidence like the Ukrainian government does, and I will be better than that. So here we go. Here you can see the, hold on. hold up. Okay, so here you can see the aircraft on the tarmac before the alleged drone attack, and after there's just an additional plane. So no damage can be spotted. Again, this is just a lie to try to boost morale and to make the Ukrainians look like they're doing something and something's going on. No damage at the base. Okay, let's see. Scott, what are your thoughts on the production or refurbishment rate of IFVs or APCs on either side? Ukraine is struggling significantly for armored vehicles right now. We can see that almost all of their operations outside of MRAPs are being used, or outside of like a few Bradleys around Avdiivka or Pokrovsk and MRAPs. We don't really see a lot of armored vehicles for the Ukrainians. A lot of civilian vehicles are being utilized for almost everything. We don't see hardly any trucks. And according to the Ukrainian sources, there are more Russian tanks in the SMO zone than there have ever been at any time throughout the conflict. So it seems like the Russians are doing fine. There doesn't seem to be any shortage of IFVs, APCs, or tanks for the Russian side. I see new T-90s coming off the line constantly. T-90s are still being lost in Ukraine. T-80s are still being lost. T-72s are still being lost. T-62s. All of the available tanks are still being, we still see losses. So obviously they're being utilized. But I do think the war has changed very, very significantly now that the Ukrainian air defense has been degraded and tanks and armored vehicles are just not as widely utilized and relied upon as they were originally. Originally, it was artillery and armored assaults. Now it's aviation and drones. And then once nothing exists in an area, then the armored assault moves in. So it may seem like less armor is being utilized by the Russians, but that's just because the Russians need to utilize less armor, in my personal opinion. Okay, thank you for the question. Do you think a Sumy front will open? Anything can happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath. There's so much going on the front, and there's so many holes. The reason why the Kharkov offensive happened, in my personal opinion, the Kharkov incursion, was to pull reserves away from the rest of the line. That has been achieved. Ukraine clearly doesn't have reserves to spend somewhere else. Do you want to enter into the Sumy region? And if you have goals there, potentially, sure. But why would you do that when you can just continue to destroy the Ukrainian army in Toretsk and Chasiv Yar and, outside of Avdiivka? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you can, and that's why I said expect anything. The Russians could go, they could start an offensive operation in Zaporozhye. They could start an island campaign in Kherson. They could do anything like that, but it won't have a major impact regionally. So if the Russians go into Sumy, it's going to look exactly like Kharkov, where it's a small incursion, forces rotation. You don't want to invest heavily when you're winning battles currently in the East. Scott, what do you think of the Olympics opening ceremony? I mean, it's exactly what I would expect. It was horrific. I mean, I don't mind. Listen, I'm pretty accepting. I'm sort of a libertarian in most of my ideas, and I'm of a younger generation. So I'm pretty accepting of gay and whatever you want to do, as long as you're not hurting kids, as long as you're not hurting the people around you, you can do what you want. When you start pushing all of that on a lot of people, I have a problem with that. Just like I would have a problem with super conservative people pushing their values on me when I don't want those values, right? Whatever that may be. Anybody, Muslims, anybody pushing their ideas on me, white guys pushing their ideas on me, don't like it. I just leave me alone. Don't bother me. I won't bother you. Sort of my philosophy. The French Olympics opening ceremony was just a slap in the face to everybody on the opposite side of that argument. It just seemed incredibly divisive for no reason. Why are you doing the Last Supper with transgender people? I mean, you're just trying to be aggravating. That has nothing to do with the Olympics. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just the continuation of this woke shit that just, I don't know. I don't know. Why be over the top? Why be over the top? If you want to have sex with dudes, go do that. If you want to dress like a woman, go do that. Who cares? Go be happy, live your life. No, if you're not bothering me, I mean, it has literally no impact on my life as long as you're not trying to create policy or something around it. But why? But why make yourself look that gross and stupid and bad? I don't get the liberal mindset sometimes. If you want people to accept you for you, you can't shove it down everybody's throat and make them accept you. Just do sort of like, what do they call it? The therapy, like exposure therapy. Just have somebody. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Why not just like slowly allow people to get used to it, just like I did. I grew up with the acceptance of homosexuality being a normal thing, and now it's not even like a deal. Like, who cares? They're just like normal people that just don't go after the women that I enjoy going after. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Who cares? But I did not like the opening ceremony. I thought it was stupid, and I thought it was exactly a perfect picturesque symbol of the current state of the West. Just head in the sand like a bunch of ostriches. All right, I'm going to go over another article here. Talk about the overall situation for Ukraine again, sort of talking about that collapse. I'm starting to get under the impression that the Ukrainian regime is looking for a way out of this. They're starting to talk about peace talks, stuff like that. So a couple months ago, I said that there's absolutely no way negotiations are happening now. With the Trump administration coming in, it sounds like Zelensky is now getting some cold feet and is starting to look for a possible way out. Don't know if that's going to be achievable, but the probability has gone up in my analytical opinion. What percentage of missiles hitting Ukraine, Russia, civilians targets have been disrupted by EW? I think about this a lot. Propaganda win for both. I don't think that missiles are often being disrupted by electronic warfare. Some of the radiation missiles like HARM, which has performed miserably throughout this conflict, have had some interactions with EW, but I don't think that many of the missiles are being disrupted. Now, drones can be disrupted a lot more heavily by electronic warfare and stuff like that, but not missiles as much. And then propaganda win. I mean, you can. I don't know if you mean like when the missiles miss, sort of like the recent strike in Israel. In my personal opinion, I think that it was probably a Hezbollah missile. It sounded like it from the video I saw, and I'm not saying that I've looked super deep into this. I'm not making an argument either way. I don't really care. I think that place is about to erupt with war, and nobody will remember that strike anytime later. But I do believe that it was an accident by Hezbollah. I don't think that they intended to target that field. I think that they were using their very large MLRS. It's like Burkina or whatever it is. It's an Iranian MLRS system, and they just fire these huge missiles that have a massive CEP, but their accuracy isn't the best. And I'm pretty sure that there were some Israeli targets in that area. So if that's what you mean by like EW messing something up and hitting like, a civilian area, maybe that makes a propaganda win, but I don't see anything like that. All right. Hey, Scott, north of Chasiv Yar, there's some small hills. Thought it was I thought it was in an area, and it was an area, and wanted to know your thoughts on it, i.e. if it was important. Yeah, so I can actually take you guys over to my good old little topographical map. Thank you, my guy, for forcing me to open this map today. I wasn't planning on it, but I will never turn down the opportunity to talk about my favorite hobby, which is topography. So let's go ahead and get into this map here. So what I think you're referring to is these hills north of Chasiv Yar. It's sort of an industrial mound from a mining operation. And this is what I talked about when I was going over my updates. I thought that the Russians would have to cross here and Kalinina and take these hills and then begin operations into Chasiv Yar in that way. And then also crossing down here onto the high ground in Stupochki and then forcing up and forcing the Ukrainians out of this area. What ended up happening was the Russians secured the high ground on this side of the river, and then a weak spot opened up and the Russians crossed. I did think it was of vital importance that the Russians capture this. I still think it is for the future of operations outside of Chasiv Yar to the north. But what it looks like is that the Russians are just going to be able to take this head on, which is kind of rather impressive. Okay. Thoughts on a conflict with Hezbollah and Israel? I'll talk about that in just a second. I'll get into that. Caspian Sea updates. Unfortunately, no missile launches to be seen currently. Okay. Caught back up. Yes. A little bit. Yes. There we go. All right. Okay. Next article here. All right. This is from Politico. A bad deal with Trump on Ukraine could at least postpone a worse one with Putin, which is now the Ukrainians are choosing between the lesser of two evils, which is not a good position to be in when you're fighting for the existence of your regime. It's possible European NATO members could convince a Trump White House to leave Kiev's military backing to them with some strings attached. Okay, so this is from Derek White, is a emeritus professor of law at the University of Oxford. I can't read that word while it's italicized. Since surviving an assassination attempt, former U.S. President Donald Trump has secured his nomination as the Republican Party's presidential candidate. Meanwhile, latest polling shows Vice President Kamala Harris is the favorite to become the Democratic nominee. It is neck and neck with Trump. No, it's not. But that's okay. For UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, however, there is little choice but to stay close to the US president, whoever they turn out to be. Hence the charm offensive he launched in Trump's direction months ago. The tricky thing with Starmer's strong backer, the tricky thing is Starmer's is a strong backer of Ukraine. Sitting Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky directly to his right at last week's European Political Community Summit hosted by the UK. The Prime Minister pledged support to Kiev, quote, for as long as it takes. All right, sorry guys, you have to listen to me read like a fucking fourth grader, but this is, again, the commitment that we talked about that I had said for a long time is just the worst possible thing that the UK could have done. And hence why that Europe will be on the hook for what happens to Ukraine once, if Trump is to come into the presidency. They're stuck, they're trapped, and basically what they're arguing is we need to continue giving weapons to Ukraine. We need Ukraine to not lose. This is going to be a bad thing for the Eurozone, and with or without you, we are going to need to continue this, right? So I'm just going to keep reading here a little bit. But Trump's allies like Elderbridge Colby, who is tipped as a possible national security advisor to Trump, sees China as the main threat to U.S. security. So this is the thing, right? I talked about this a lot as well. The U.S. focus, the neocon focus is China. And when you're switching administrations from the Biden administration, who is obsessed with Russia, to a Trump administration who is fearful of China, you are going to see policy shifts in accordance to Ukraine, which is going to negatively impact the war for Ukraine. Trump boasted he could end the Ukraine war in 24 hours, which is true. Basically, all he would have to do is say that the U.S. is no longer providing any support, and all actions of European governments are squarely on them. at that point, the war would likely end very, very quickly. Maybe not 24 hours, but quick. Though he did not qualify this after a recent phone call with Zelensky, saying that both sides will be able to come together at the negotiating table, to come together to negotiate a deal that ends the violence and paves a path forward for prosperity. So again, this is just not good for Ukraine. A Trump presidency is going to be probably the worst possible outcome. A Kamala Harris presidency is going to probably be the destruction, the total destruction of Ukraine. The total. Guys, talking for an hour on end is so difficult to not like skip over stuff and mess up your words. All right. F-16s. So Ukraine will receive its first F-16s in a few weeks, WP reports. This is interesting because I was told specifically, I think, like 18 months ago, that the F-16s would be here at the beginning of 2024. And then that became May 2024. And now we're looking at a few weeks as we go into August, which would be September 2024, which is exactly what me and Brian Biletic said 18 months ago on a podcast. I was going back and watching some of my podcasts with some of my original guests. And me and him talked about how the minimum amount of time it takes to train pilots and set up logistics is a year to 2 years. And we both said probably 18 months to a year is how long this is going to take, or 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. And that's exactly what's happening. They can't get the airports ready. The pilots aren't trained, and the aircraft are likely not even ready to be sent. It's a complete disaster. It was the last grasp at some sort of morale boost from the West, the last wonder weapon that they could find, and it didn't end up working out very well for them. Okay, hold on. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to just read a little bit of this. Sorry, you guys have to listen to my reading again. The first of the long-awaited Western F-16 fighter jets pledged to Ukraine will arrive in a few weeks, the Washington Post reported on July 28th. Again, a few weeks when it was supposed to be delivered. The first 12 or 18 or whatever were supposed to be delivered a month ago, or a couple months ago in May. Ukraine is awaiting at least 79 F-16s from the Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium, and Norway, with up to 20 expected to arrive this year. So again, this 80 number or the 120 number or whatever they're talking about is completely ridiculous. They don't have pilots, so that's just a ridiculous statement. And they're only expected to get 20 this year, which is not really replacing their combat losses as is. So not going to make any difference on the front line at all. Kiev has been calling, that's misspelled, has been calling for the U.S.-made fourth-generation fighter jets since the first year of the full-scale war. Again, we have to make sure that we hit it with the full-scale war because, in case you forgot, in order to bolster its air force, which is made up of Soviet-made aircraft and has been significantly depleted over the past years of war. All of the Soviet aircraft in all of Eastern Europe have been given to Ukraine, and they've lost almost all of it. Despite promises by the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on July 10th that the first Dutch and Danish F-16 are already on their way, no delivery has been confirmed so far. Oh, wow! They're lying. Crazy. Man, that's crazy. Who would have guessed that the United States would lie to one of its proxies? The planes are likely to be used to strengthen. So this is the kicker right here, guys. This is the kicker. The planes are likely to be used to strengthen Ukraine's air defense and shoot down missiles and drones. Missiles, drones, and aircraft, not strike Russian ground forces near the front. So, at the end of all of it, the F-16s, which were supposed to shape the battlefield for the upcoming Ukrainian offensives that are going to push the Russians out of Ukraine and resecure Crimea and this, that, and the other, strike Russian airfields in Belgorod and the Kursk regions all over. That's not going to happen. F-16s are now what the air defense doing meme is literally F-16s now. So every time an F-16 is lost, we get to say what air defense doing because that's what they're going to be used for. You want to know another kicker? Because if you guys read down the article a little bit further, you would realize, according to WP, the F-16s will not be brought close to the front line at first. Okay, like it's going to change. At first, it'll change, guys. Don't worry. We're going to beat the Russians back, and then we're going to have air superiority, and they'll be able to fly wherever they want. So it is unclear whether they will be able to deter Russian planes flying in from Russian airspace. Oh, hey, guess what? They won't. This is so aggravating to read. I've been saying this for a year, and I've been laughed at and made fun of and all sorts of things. Not by you guys, of course. You guys know what's going on. But this is just, it's like peak. Oh, how do I explain this? All I have to do is now sit and wait, and every day something else comes out that basically confirms that my predictions have been right and stuff like that. It's really not hard. All you have to do is just use basic logic and simple reasoning, and you can figure this stuff out. But there's another kicker in here. Hold on, guys. Ukraine's F-16s will carry. Okay, hold on. Ukraine's F-16s will carry the advanced AIM-120 medium-ranged air-to-air missile, which are also conveniently used on NASAM's ground-based systems. So the weapon systems that the West cannot provide enough of, right? The weapon systems that, Ukraine doesn't already have enough air defense missiles. So now they're going to have to split. And I believe that's the quote here. Ukraine currently does not have enough of these missiles, so they will have to split between the F-16s and NASAMs, according to the official cited. So not only are the air defense F-16s going to not be striking Russian positions and not going to be shaping the battlefield, they're only going to be used to chase down Russian missiles, which the Russians have more missiles than the Ukrainians have AIM-120s and F-16s, so not going to work. Not only is that the primary role of the F-16s, but they're not even going to be good at that because they have to share their air-to-air missiles with the ground air defense systems. Holy fuck, has this just turned into a massive L for Ukraine? This is ridiculous, dude. This is unbelievable, and probably one of the largest propaganda failures of the war for the United States in regards to its aid to Ukraine. Just a pretty big joke, guys. How will a Ukrainian collapse affect the U.S. election? It'll probably mean that Kamala loses. I don't think there's going to be a big collapse before, like on the battlefield, there's going to be big collapses. You're going to see massive chunks of Ukraine getting lost, cities getting lost, that sort of stuff. A tactical battlefield collapse or a military collapse is very different from a governmental collapse or a demographic collapse or something like that, right? A population gets upset and then, they force regime change or whatever. That's entirely different. I don't think we're going to see that before the U.S. election. I do think when I say collapse is imminent, I mean military tactical battlefield collapses where the Russians are going to very clearly be in a position of immense strength. There will be no way that the Ukrainians will come to the negotiating table and with any sort of bargaining position. But the Ukrainian government in its current form, I believe, will still be standing by the time of the U.S. elections. Okay. Going to talk about another article here. This one's kind of goes along with the F-16s and pretty funny. Only 6 Ukrainian pilots have been trained to fly the new F-16 fighter jets. So part of the problem is the training of pilots. And I've been talking about this for over a year now. Only 6 Ukrainian pilots have reportedly been trained by European NATO members to fly F-16 fighter jets due to be delivered to Kiev next month. Ukraine has been urging its allies for months to send them the jets, claiming that they would help defend against long-range strikes and bring about a swift end to the war. Again, this is what the promise was. That is what the promise was, guys. that the F-16s were going to be able to conduct long-range strikes that positively affected the Ukrainian military on the ground. What air defense doing is all I got to say about that. Citing Ukrainian and Western officials, the Washington Post reported that not only are there too few trained pilots to give Ukraine an edge, but the jets cannot immediately be used on the front line due to improving Russian air defense. Improving Russian air defense, which is funny because I was told a couple months ago when the Ukrainians had ATACMS that Russian air defense assets were being completely obliterated in Crimea and that the Crimean airspace was going to be undefended and this, that, and the other. Apparently, they forgot that Russia has hundreds of S-300 batteries. And, it's ridiculous, guys. This is just continuous cope and continuous backtracking and downplaying. And it's just getting worse and worse. And my job is just getting easier and easier and easier every day. So 6 F-16s with 6 F-16 pilots on their way to shape the battlefield in Ukraine's favor. God bless the West. Okay, here we go. Next article. New York Times. Russia punches through weakened lines in the east of Ukraine. Military analysts say Russian forces are increasingly investigating Ukrainian lines to identify weakened positions before attacking and breaking through. Oh, so the Russians are achieving breakthroughs. Okay, because I was told that all of the advances that the Russians are making are not breakthroughs. They're just pushing through empty fields and that it's unimportant. Don't know why they chose this picture. A resident of Pokrovsk surveying damage to his house after a Russian missile attack last month. Sorry that the Ukrainians were using your house, bro. The Ukrainian military. Russian forces have made rapid gains in eastern Donetsk region over the past week or so, capturing a few villages. Capturing a few villages and closing in on the city of Pokrovsk, one of the main Ukrainian defensive strongholds in the area. Russian forces are now only a dozen miles from Pokrovsk after Moscow's troops pushed along the railway line, which we just talked about, and advanced about 3 miles towards the city, according to open source maps. Could be me. Let's see. Open source maps. Let's see. Where does this take us? Deep state. Motherfucker. God damn it. Of course, it's deep state. Not my map yet. We'll get there, boys. Hold on. I lost the article I was reading. Okay. Of the battlefield based on combat footages and satellite imagery, the Russian progress contrasts sharply with the slow but steady gains that Moscow had made so far this year in the Donetsk region, sometimes measured in only a few hundred yards a week. Again, snowballing. So the New York Times is now saying what I've been saying for months, that this is going to escalate and it's going to get increasingly more difficult for the Ukrainians to deal with. Military and analysts say that the swift gains reflect Moscow's improved ability to exploit cracks in Ukraine's defensive lines, which have been thinned by manpower shortages and strained by relentless Russian attacks along a more than 600-mile, 1,000-kilometer front. In recent months, the experts say Russian forces have increasingly focused on identifying weakened and poorly organized Ukrainian units before breaking through by throwing scores of troops and armored vehicles into the battlefield. So, at the end of the day, we still have to get a little cope, meat wave attacks, armored assaults that are, they're just throwing Russians at the problem and solving it that way. But basically what I've been saying for a goddamn year. A goddamn year I've been saying this. And now this is mainstream media posting this. So it's vilifying. Vilifying is not the word. Gratifying, but not... doesn't make me happy that everybody just chose to ignore the entire time because it was right in front of our faces. All right. Last but not least, Biden administration announces a new $1.7 billion lethal aid package to UK. Lethal aid package. Has to be lethal. CNN. The Biden administration announced on Monday a new lethal aid. Sorry, my dog's barking. A new lethal aid package for Ukraine totaling about $1.7 billion and largely consisting of missiles and ammunition for missiles. artillery, and air defense systems the U.S. has previously provided to Ukraine. So this is just shells, HIMARS ammunition, and air defense missiles, which are extremely expensive. The U.S. is committing $1.5 billion in new weapons and equipment to Ukraine through the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which will include capabilities to augment Ukraine's air defense. Okay, so this means making Frankenbooks, so putting more depleted Western air defense missiles on Soviet air defense systems. Fires, capabilities to augment Ukraine's air defense. Fires, okay, I don't know what fires means. And anti-tank weapons, as well as funding to sustain the previous commitment. Wow, my God. Funding to sustain equipment previously committed by the United States, according to the Defense Department in new releases. Okay, sorry about that. Getting a little tired. Yeah, so again, just nothing really. Another two. Really, what you're looking at, it says 1.7 billion, but really what it is, it's 200 million, and then the 1.5 billion is just gonna come eventually, whenever. 200 billion in basically another logistics package. Not a lot more, not what Ukraine needs. Ukraine needs more. They're not getting it. End of story. It's just it's never going to get better from this point. It was never going to get better from 2023, and it won't get any better from the position that the Ukrainians were in 2022. Has the West? Is it truly over? Has the West truly fallen? No, not yet, but they're on their way out, and they're not making anything easier for themselves. So they need to fix that. All right, guys, we are at an hour. Go ahead, and if you have any more questions, get them in right now. I'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Be on the lookout. I'm probably going to be doing a new demonetized video. I have to go on and see actually how much combat footage we have. I'll probably be going on and doing a new demonetized video tomorrow, I think, and then be on the lookout because I've been posting a lot more videos, bro chats with Zag, AMK, and Von Clausewitz. Two of those episodes are out on my page in just the regular videos. Not everything I do is live stream, so make sure you guys go check that out. Please follow me on Patreon. It is free to make an account and follow me there and get some access to some good content. If you do choose to support me, thank you guys so much. You are making my world go round. I really appreciate it. I'm on here every day because of you guys in particular. And make sure to follow me on Telegram and Twitter. All right, let's get to some questions before we get out of here. The West can't make more shells. They are having an increasingly hard time finding the industrial solutions to the industrial scale war that we are currently seeing. When do you think the war will end? I've always said 2026 is when I think everything's going to wrap up, but who knows? If we have a massive collapse before then, it's hard to give you an exact prediction when you don't have the proper information from the Ukrainian side about what's happening with their demographics, with their casualties, with their equipment situation, everything. Oh yeah, opinion on Hezbollah versus Israel. Thank you, man. Sorry you had to donate again. I forgot your question. All right, yeah, so I can talk about this. I think that currently the Israelis are not finished with Gaza. The U.S. cannot solve the situation in the Red Sea with the Houthis, and now Israel basically got the green light from the United States and Europe to probably fight a small protracted war in southern Lebanon. I think that this is a colossal mistake, just like I think Gaza was a colossal mistake, which, by the way, after 9 months, they still haven't solved that whole thing. There's still Israeli soldiers dying in Yan Kunis and stuff like that to snipers and ATGMs and RPGs and landmines, and there's guys still coming out of tunnels and everything. So situation in Gaza has not been resolved. Situation in Lebanon is only going to make things worse. The Israeli economy is in the crapper right now. But after the recent Hezbollah strike on the soccer field, I do think it was a Hezbollah strike, but Hezbollah has not targeted civilians at all throughout this entire conflict. And why would they target Syrians in the Golan Heights, Syrian civilians who are Arab or Christian? It doesn't really make any sense when the enemy is the state of Israel. We've seen dozens of Hezbollah attacks across the border over the last month and previous months, and none of them have ever targeted civilians. So why the MO shift right now for no reason at a time when, Netanyahu is in the United States asking to go to war with Lebanon, basically. Comes back. Whether it was a false flag or whether it was Hezbollah, I think it was probably just Hezbollah missed a target, and then the Israelis capitalized on the propaganda value of it and are utilizing it. Because realistically, it's not even Israel that got attacked. It's the Golan Heights, right? It's occupied Syria. So in and of itself, can't really make an argument. Israelis weren't the ones killed, so it's hard to make an argument there. But the war cabinet has given Netanyahu and his administration the go-ahead to do whatever he deems fit. And we will likely be seeing an expanded war in the region in the coming weeks. In my personal opinion, I think the Israelis are now staging for that. I think it could potentially be the single worst decision Israel makes while Gaza is not secure and the entire region is hot. I think we could be looking at a much larger expanded war in the Middle East. And I think that's exactly what the Biden administration and Kamala administration want to have happen. I think the best way Kamala gets reelected is if a war starts in the Middle East. Okay. Yeah, Turkey talks. Turkey said that they will enter the conflict against Israel. Yeah, Erdogan talks a lot. And I don't think Turkey is in the position to do any such thing. And even if they did, that would just be such a wide regional war. And I don't know how that would work between NATO. And it's just that's a mess. Don't listen to him. He's just a talker. Possibly dumb question, but what are your detailed thoughts about the accuracy of more mainstream online sources such as Oryx? Well, it's been debunked since literally day one, and he quit because it wasn't doing anything for him. So, I mean, if it was successful and it was making a difference and it mattered, he would still be doing it, but he's not. Tolerant fools like me is the reason why the West is such a shit state. And intolerant fools like you is why whatever country you're from is why the country is the way it is and has all of its negative downfalls as well. What a stupid thing to say. What happens when Chasiv Yar falls? The high ground north of Chasiv Yar, if you go look at a topographical map, will shift in Russia's advantage, and then the entire battle for the Donbass will become much, much more difficult for the Ukrainians. Yeah, no, so like I get this, guys. The whole the soccer field was hit by a missile, not like the other military targets. Well, I've seen MLRSs used, I've seen ATGMs and drones used. So I've seen all mix and match of weapons used on Israeli targets by Hezbollah. But it doesn't matter, guys. It doesn't matter who did it. This is the thing that I always talk about with like when a hospital gets hit by an air defense or potentially a Russian missile or whatever. Not talking about the recent hospital strike. I'm just talking about in general the Russians hit a puppy mill, the Russians hit this, the Russians hit that. It doesn't matter. One side is going to propagate what they believe, the other side is going to propagate what they believe, and the outcome is not going to be changed by the truth. And that's exactly what's happening in Israel. It doesn't matter what happened. The kids died. The Israelis are going to use it, and I believe a war is going to come out of it. So it just doesn't matter. It matters, I guess, to you what the truth is, but it just doesn't matter. Do you think Russia and Ukraine are taking the same losses because Ukraine Telegram always shows mass Russian losses, but at the same time, the Russia has superior firepower? No, I think the Ukrainians are taking much higher losses. I just think that the Ukrainians don't have the same OPSEC concerns that the Russians have, so they post everything. Every single video that they have of a Russian dying, they post it because that's the battle that they're fighting. The Russians are dropping hundreds of glide bombs on Ukraine weekly. I mean, the Kharkov is getting hit by glide bombs like every 20 minutes. It's ridiculous. There's no way the casualties are anywhere near parity. It's just not possible with the amount of munitions flying back and forth. It's very clear from the manpower issues on the ground. It's very clear from Mediazona casualty reports for the Russians, stuff like that. It's easy to tell, guys. It's nowhere near close. The Ukrainians are just better at propaganda. They've been better the entire war, and they will be better probably after the war is over. Even if Ukraine isn't a state, the Ukrainians will still be better at propaganda than the Russians. Yeah, Aragon is a lot of talk and no action. Well, he's just a businessman, man. He's like a carpet salesman in the middle of the Europe-Asian connection. Like, that's what he does. He blackmails everybody. He uses everybody against each other. He benefits from both sides. You know, he's been pro-Russian and pro-Western. He's in NATO, but he's the most extent of NATO. He's on the very outside of NATO. He's always the problem for like Sweden and Finland to join NATO. He was the problem there. So yeah, he's just a lot of talk. Do you think there will be another refugee wave this winter? Very possible, especially if there's a massive military collapse. It's very possible. Massive losses Ukrainian make believable. Wait, massive losses Ukrainian make believable. Half comments are like the best. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Hour and 11 minutes. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. Please share if you know anybody who would like to listen to my dumbass talk for an hour and 10 minutes. Be safe. Have a great day. If there's enough news, there will be a live stream tomorrow. If not, there will definitely be video content posted tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that, guys. Love you. Have a good day.